All right, we're going to bring this meeting to order. Welcome everyone. This is the January 3rd, 2024 meeting of the Board of Finance. I'm Mike Anderson, Chairman, Dan Smith, Vice Chair, Sarah Nelson, Carl Johnson, Gary Nino is joining us online, Lou Gendrella, Winona Verdine is alternate, and Dean Friend, alternate, is the secretary. We'll open it up to public comments. Seeing none at this time, we'll move on to correspondence. We do have public comment at the end if someone wants to speak up. Just received prior to the meeting correspondence from King and Associates, PC. There are auditors for the Board of Finance, but basically, they just want to make sure the presentation for the audits on the next meeting, which is January 17th. And they would like to be listed first because they don't want to go through everything and wait to the end. And we are paying them for everything that they do. So we will put them first on the list. Other than that, the letter itself, I've seen before, and I'll scan this and email this out to everybody afterwards. It's a letter dated December 20th, 2023 to the Board of Finance. And that's all the correspondence we have. Move on to agenda item number 4, Selectman request for an appropriation for a used Quint ladder truck for the North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company, with a presentation by the North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company.
Okay, so the fire company came to the Board of Selectmen a while back and let us know there was a truck that was going to be available to them, possibly through Colchester. It's a most people see it as a ladder truck. It's actually called a Quint. It's 75 feet. It's not the full ladder truck. The price on it is $50,000. I'm going to have the chief and their mechanic talk a little bit about the quality of the truck, where it stands. If the truck is we think the Board of Selectmen, we've seen the presentation, we think the truck is a viable truck to use. It's we could probably get 5 years minimum out of it, which once we sell that and down the road engine 2, which it's going to eventually replace, we get all the money back for getting this truck. And down the road, I'll let them show the presentation of why they think they need it. The Board of Selectmen feel they need it. We voted to move it forward to you as a line item transfer that you see in your packet. And it would come from the undesignated fund for $50,000 to purchase a used fire truck from the town of Colchester, Connecticut. It's an AH-75 Quint in parentheses ladder truck. So I'm going to turn this over to Chief Steinhardt, and he'll let you know who else is going to be speaking this evening.
So it's going to be basically 3 of us speaking. So Captain Burgle is going to give you the actual presentation. There's a PowerPoint is going to go through. Then Chief Engineer Tag's going to speak to you about the mechanics. He'll go over his certifications and qualifications for that. And at the end, I'll come back up and I'll answer any questions you may have.
And your name again, please?
Kyle Burgle.
I'm sorry?
Kyle Burgle. All right, good evening.
Kyle
Burgle.
Burgle, I'm sorry.
All right, good evening. So I'm gonna go over the first part of the PowerPoint. It's kind of why we need this, the uses in town. So we go to the first slide. Residential growth. So population going from dating back 1930 to now, the town of North Stonington's grown from approximately 1,000 to now 5,000. Not only population, but construction. We're not building 1,200 square foot homes anymore. The average size of a new home today is roughly 2,500 square feet. Slide. So these next two slides, I'm not gonna read them off, a lot of words. Basically, what they're both saying is, one is ISO, which is Insurance Services Office. That's how insurance companies give us rates. Unfortunately, we're at a disadvantage for the hydrants, but it's another topic. And then the next slide, NFPA. Basically, to sum it up, what they're both stating is even the lowest hazard, which is a 1 to 2 family dwelling, they require or recommend one aerial unit, which we do not have. We have to rely on other towns for that. Get that through this. Next slide. So operations, the volunteer service is a dying service. We're fortunate enough to have 2 paid guys during the day to supplement most of us being at work. The downside to that is suppression and search. That takes a minimum of 4 firefighters, so we still need volunteers during the day. When you get to the ladder portion, it can take up to 4 to 6 firefighters to set up ground ladders to perform our duties. And the big advantage to a quint would be that one firefighter can drive the truck there and set up a ladder, so it eliminates a lot of manpower. Also, ladder placement. We're at a big disadvantage relying on mutual aid today because we're sending our first, second, third new trucks out, and they still may be on the way from another town. It is crucial that the ladder truck get there first so it can place in front of the residents. Now, when we have 3, 4 engines and all our hose there, sometimes by the time the mutual aid arrives, they're sitting in the street. So it's kind of useless. Next slide. So some more uses and needs in our town. But going back to the first slide, I said construction's changing, construction's growing. There are roofs that we cannot get to in town with a ground ladder. They're too tall. There's unique construction. Some roofs we cannot be on just because of the pitch of the roof. It's unsafe for us to be up there. Chimney fires. Some chimneys we can't even access, even if we're on the roof. They're 6 to 10 feet tall. And certain roof materials. Slate, wood shingles, not common, but what is becoming more common is solar shingles, solar panels. Those are very difficult, unsafe for us to work around. Commercial response. So you don't think of North Stonington as a commercial town, but the schools, the Stonington Institute, Quinlan Enterprises, the truck stop, all the hotels we have, Gilville Foods, churches, so on and so forth. We cannot get to the roofs of these structures without an aerial. These are just a couple random houses I found off the GIS. The one on the left, my parents' house. We cannot get to the chimney of that structure because it's too tall, even standing on the roof. And then on Farm Pond Road, that roof is just too steep to operate on. And I'm not even sure a ladder. The building's so tall, we would be pushing it just trying to get up there. Slide. The safety and survival aspect of it. So ventilation is a key component of fire suppression. This lets heat, smoke, toxic gases, and pressure out of the structure. The key to ventilation, though, is it must be directly over the fire. So we are operating on the roof directly over fire. And with the distance of some residences in town, fire could be burning for several minutes by the time we get there. So that leads into safety. Working off an aerial unit is much safer than actually being on the roof. Having an aerial would allow us to be on the actual ladder while performing this operation. So if the roof were to collapse, we would not be on. Especially today with modern construction, another concern we have is, you'll see it in the next slide when we get there. Modern construction is getting cheap, so they rate modern construction about 5 to 10 minutes of heat exposure, and the roof will fail. Another safety concern now that we're in the winter time, snow and ice. So that's down space. Slide. Just some pictures of how the operation looks when you're physically up on the roof. Slide. Here is a picture of gusset plates. These are what they use in modern construction. They don't even build the roofs. They come in all pre-built, just like that. And those gusset plates are just sheets of metal with little tacks. You know, they're just stamped into the wood, and the tacks on them are maybe the size of a thumbtack. So you could picture they're not going to last very long under fire conditions. Slide. This is you can go back to that. That's the video. We just wanted to show this as a video of a roof collapse, a firefighter falling through it. Yeah, might be best to stop. Not working. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our chief engineer to go over the condition of the winter look.
Thanks, Kyle.
Good evening, Jason Tagg, Chief Engineer for the fire company. My job is fire trucks. I'm a Master Certified EVT Technician, which is emergency vehicles. Master Certified ASE Technician, Master Certified with the crossover for the two of them, as well as ambulance and aircraft firefighter. So this is what I do. So I went up on my time and looked over this vehicle. I gave it a DOT inspection, which is the federal inspection that determines whether or not the vehicle is safe to operate or not on roadways, which it is. I also, while I was there, basically gave it like an NFPA fire truck inspection, looked over the ladder, looked over the pump, crawled around underneath it to see if there were any major issues, rot or anything like that. There's not. It's actually in very good condition for the year. As you can see on the slide, it does have low miles. It's been basically a local truck for Colchester its entire life. Pump hours 302, that's extremely low. Aerial hours 1500, that's average. So as you can see, good condition. It had a ladder inspection done, I believe last year, which is always done by a third-party company. The company that I work for, we don't even do ladder inspections. Third party comes in and does them, passed its ladder inspection, which they do all the weight tip testing and all of that stuff. The last pump test that it had, which was last year, I do that. I did not do that truck, but I do those. It passes pump test, which that tests all the piping for pressure, tests the pump to make sure it can reach all the pressures that it's supposed to, and it can reach the volume that it's rated for. So overall, the truck's in good condition. Has a few minor things that we would replace when we got, or repair when we got the truck, but they're nothing that is detrimental to the operation of the vehicle and the safe operation. If anybody's got any questions, feel free.
What's the lower one? Is that your truck that you have now? What, 95 truck?
Yes, that's engine 2.
Okay. And how long is engine two supposed to be in service? Approximately.
I'll pass it over to the chief.
So, good question. How
I,
long?
yeah, I think, I thought I heard you saying, or someone saying that the plan would be eventually to
Yeah,
take
So the
engine
plan-
two out of,
Right, so if we purchase this used Quint, it would be, engine two will be put as reserve for, we would like to see up to 5 years until the new one came in, replace it. We've agreed to, reduce that time if a contract is signed to purchase the new Quint, which would replace that engine in the Colchester vehicle that we're trying to purchase. So at that point, you would replace both those vehicles and you'd get well over the money you're spending what we're requesting today back to the town. The point is, the Quint is a used 1997. Our truck that we have currently is a 95. So we're gonna be training for a year or two on this new piece of equipment for the town because we've never had a ladder truck in town. There are a bunch of us in the room tonight that are career firemen that have operated ladder trucks before, but the entire department needs to be trained on it. So the point is, in the event, we have that spare vehicle in-house, in the event we have an issue with the ladder truck. Plus, historically, we haven't followed a replacement plan in our story. We say we're gonna replace vehicles on a time schedule, and we're not gonna replace a 1995 fire truck with a 1997, expect to keep it 15 years. It just does not gonna work. So the purpose of holding on to engine two is to ensure this Quint works for us and that we get through what we need to do with the training. And then when we go to replace engine two, because engine two is gonna be replaced with a Quint, that both vehicles go away and one backs in. So we're not looking to increase the fleet, we're looking to consolidate the fleet. So at the end of the 2 years, hopefully, we can get, a contract signed to replace it, that truck will go away. Understanding if today we ordered the new Quint, it does not get delivered for 4 years. That is a lead time right now for us to get a new fire truck. That's any vendor. Right now, it's about 4 years to place the order for that.
I guess it's gonna be relevant for this capital plan that we're talking about. Would you have to pay for that unit before the 4 years or once it on delivery?
The last fire truck that we did was engine one. I carried a $650,000 check to the vendor the day I went and bought the truck, so it's all at the end.
Okay.
They may want a small down payment at the beginning that we're committed to it, but the major payment is at the end.
The one question I have on this is the maintenance that you're talking about, is there a painting issue? Is it a different color than ours? Is there anything, is there gonna be cost on top of buying it?
So no, with, like as the engineer said, there are minor things that are wrong with it, nothing that puts out of service. We're gonna fix it. It's about $5,000 worth of repairs to it, which we will take care of under our current budget. There's not gonna be an additional request for maintenance on or repair on it. It's gonna fall and be covered by our existing budget.
Okay,
The truck is yellow. It's not a white fire truck, so it will be a white and yellow fire truck coming through North Stonington that will say North Stonington on it for the next 5 years until we replace it with the engine two and this Quint get replaced with a new truck. Of course, we'll make sure the paint scheme's right. We'll buy new ones.
yeah, I'm not personally worried about it. I'm just wondering whether or not there's gonna be an additional cost
We're
for,
not painting it.
okay.
Nope.
All right, good to know.
Because realistically, guys, no, if we went up there tonight, picked it up, we could drive it to our firehouse today, put our equipment on it, and put it in service tonight if we wanted. Well, not, we still use it. If we got it,
Charlie,
yes.
do we need to re-equip it?
No, so it's taking the place of engine two. So engine two's equipment will go on to the ladder. So understanding a Quint is a ladder truck and an engine as one.
No, I understand that. I'm just curious,
Everybody understands that.
if it does go down, you're just gonna shovel all the stuff over and.
Right, if we
Okay.
have any issues with it for some reason, again, it's an older truck. If it goes down, engine two takes its place, all the equipment gets moved back on engine two. Again, that's why I don't want to replace a 95 with a 97. I have no problem replacing with 2024. We all know there's unforeseen issues. It's an older truck, but after the inspection, the mechanic get on it, he sees no issues with us getting at least 5 years.
Where are we gonna park it?
in the firehouse.
Where's the room? I did the tour and I remember hearing conversations about shuffling some engines around or possibly putting something outside, but outside would need to be heated. So what's the plan?
So the plan for engine two would be, we can store it in the firehouse between a brush truck and an ambulance. So I did the measurements. It's gonna be very tight for a short term. We'll have to live with it. So the ambulance will have to shift to the left, the brush truck will have to shift to the right. It can be backed in between it. Or we can winterize it and place it out in the garage out back. So that's our options. We can store it in an unheated garage, not the perfect situation, but we can blow out the pump, drain the tank, do all this stuff, so it will be stored out in cold storage. It's not favorable for fire apparatus, but we could do it. So if it became a storage issue inside the firehouse, we could winterize it, put it out back without.
And I don't know what I'm talking about, but I remember seeing the tubes for the vents that go into the ceiling and
Yep.
outside. So if there's enough floor space is what you're telling me, do we have enough other space to hook up the rest of the ventilation or how will that work?
So. Talking about. Yeah. So the Quint has a clean air filter installed on it because Colchester doesn't have a Plenavit system, so it's already factory installed. Right. Yes, it has its own system attached to the truck. Okay. Okay.
Thanks. All right, so right now, the replacement Quint on this capital budget, since you guys are here and we're gonna be going over this next, if there's any questions from the board regarding your capital plan, the Quint itself looks like it's in fiscal year 26-27. Is that what your plan is?
That's what the plan was, yes.
Okay.
Understanding 26-27, if we make the purchase, it's not coming in 4 years after. So 26-27, you're not getting until 30-31. So that's one of the things that look like. That's also the same thing with the service truck. They were doing a second payment on this year. It's 18 months for delivery on the service truck. That's what I got from the highway department. Same deal.
All right, so that looks like that puts us outside the 5 years that you were talking about, that these two units, you think that you can,
You'd have to commit to the purchase within 5 years. But your payment would have to be at the end, so if we don't commit to a payment, then we'll never have the truck. So you have to commit with the next 5 years to buy the truck and then have a plan to fund it.
right?
So 5 plus 4 is 9.
Right.
Okay. So it's the way that will work, right? If
If you waited the full.
the longer we wait, the further down the road, we
Right,
gotta make the
so-
other two.
The
Okay.
understanding is, yeah, exactly. The longer you wait to make the purchase, again, you start, say you wait till year 5 of this used ladder truck, it's gonna be a 9 years that truck will sit here before it leaves. We're looking the next year or two to sign a contract to replace that truck in 4 years. Again, understanding that prices are only going up on these apparatus. The last price I got for a similar replacement was about $1.3 to $1.4 million. Again, $50,000 to steel, where similar one today that was a little bit older was, what was it, $80,000? They're selling it for $80,000, almost the same truck. So we're getting a pretty good deal, $30,000 less than the one that was online for sale today.
So I guess that's what my question was, is, we have, and this, obviously this capital plan is a working plan. It's not a set in stone, but we have you at $999,000 for the Quint in year 26-27, when actually the chicken's gonna come home to roost in probably 29-30. If you ordered it next year.
Right, so typically when you sign the contract, your price is locked in. So the sooner you sign a contract, you're gonna buy it, hopefully you lock the price in.
Sure.
So sooner the better, because the longer you wait, it's gonna be more. I mean, we look at during COVID, what was the percentage it went up? COVID?
Why don't you, Jason, just come up to one of these mics, just so we have. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good. Just to go over the cost increase for, this is the apparatus that we sell at our company. About 2.5 years ago, semi-local department in Connecticut was that they bought a top model, every bell and whistle they could get was 1.1 million. I talked, and this is for a 75-foot ladder truck. I talked to our salesman, before the previous meeting with the Board of Selectmen. That vehicle is now 1.6. So that may slow down a little bit, but they are still climbing. And that's across the board with every manufacturer.
Okay, thank you.
Charlie, if we all agree and we send this, are you guys gonna be able to do a campaign to let the townspeople know your feelings? So that everybody that's been asking, especially me, questions, would be informed on why you need it?
We could, post our PowerPoint presentation on our Facebook and whatever site, town website, stuff like that.
Right, but how about some type of campaign to let them know what you're doing? So they just don't
We can
think,
try, but we also had 3 meetings.
yeah, I know, it's,
So
we're the same, we're in the same boat, but I'm just saying, you got a big group of people that you really gotta convince. I mean, I think you've got most of us convinced, but we're 5 or 6.
Oh, we're gonna have a presentation because there's gonna be a town meeting on it. If we move this forward to appropriation, there's gonna be a town meeting. They're gonna do the presentation there. I would suggest if anyone asks anyone in the Board of Finance or, that they should come to that meeting to be informed and. Yeah,
Because again, you're not gonna make everybody happy. Nor are we aiming to make everybody happy. The fire company's job is to protect everybody. No matter what their opinions are or their feelings are, our job is to protect everybody. And that's what this vehicle will do. It'll allow us to protect everybody.
one question, Chief, and I think this probably could help in the end. I think you were alluding to it. We buy this for what seems to be a reasonable price. Granted, it's yellow, but in the end, if we do get the Quint truck in year 29-30, you're gonna have 2 vehicles to sell, right?
Yep, the town will, yes.
The town will.
Yep.
And what kind of, do you have any estimates right now of what that's gonna return back to the town?
So like I said, with the tanker replacement we did, that we're currently still paying on, there was nothing wrong with the tanker. It was 30 years old. That is the standard standard to replace apparatus. So we got $40,000 for that truck. The used market is climbing significantly because people can't afford the $1.6, $1.7 million fire trucks. So they're buying used trucks, similar to what we're trying to do. So I would hope that the town wouldn't sell it to a broker, do it outright, sell it themselves, and put a minimum bid of $50,000 on it. So started at 50, but it's well worth more than that. You probably could sell that truck. I've seen trucks similar to it sell for almost $200,000.
Your truck, your
Our
pump,
engine.
yeah, your engine too?
I've seen trucks that age in worse shape sell for about $200,000.
Okay.
So you can definitely, if we do it right, we can make this money and some back when we sell that truck. Along with that ladder truck, which we're paying 50, they will sell for 25. So you're looking at.
That was gonna be my next question.
Yeah.
That's not gonna hold its value completely.
No, because you're not going to get a third buyer at probably the price that we're going to be.
But 5 years and you get half your money back.
But you're going to get all of it, more than all of it back with the engine being sold too. They're both going to be sold.
we have any additional questions from the board? Go ahead, Dave.
Hi, Chief. Why is Colchester getting rid of it?
Because they have a apparatus replacement cycle that they're trying to follow.
Okay.
They had, again, there was a PowerPoint presentation, on it, and they explained why all the issues they had with it. I could make you a PowerPoint and anything, tell you what I want to.
Mhm.
I had our mechanic go up there and look at it. There's nothing wrong with it, but they're following a replacement cycle and trying to stay current. That's what they're doing. They
Okay, it's
bought
just,
3 trucks at once. They put a $4 million purchase, a $4 million a bond package to address their capital needs, to get them current for apparatus.
okay. Right, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, why are they selling it for less than what they could get for it?
Because we reached out to them and they're working with us.
We're getting the
Um,
neighbor discount.
Yeah, basically. So the way they sell their trucks, as the chief explained to me, is they park it in front of the town garage and throw up a sale sign. So I'm like, all right. And I talked to them, I said, well, if we offered this number, would you guys accept it? They talked to their mechanic's garage and their selectment time. They said, yes, we'll accept that offer. So they're not publicizing this vehicle. They're holding it basically for us. So when their new one comes in, which should be in the next week or so, this one will be available probably within a month, next month or so.
This is more probably for, Bob or, what is the balance for the undesignated fund right now?
I think at Christine's last meeting, she gave you what she assumed the balance, waiting for the audit to do their presentation. We think we're doing about around 22.6 million, I believe, just over 2.6 million. That's with the anticipated returns of the town, which was about 800,000. We'll have that confirmed on your meeting on the 17th.
What's the undesignated fund balance? No.
2.6 million. I wish it was 26 million. See if you get a
Scared
new,
me there. I was
see if
like,
you get a new truck.
Town's gonna be a little upset.
Well, that.
You can have it.
I'm just worried about the percentage because we do have
Yeah.
that, we do have the undesignated fund bond threshold.
Yeah, I don't think,
Number.
I don't think that's gonna touch
I
it.
know, I think we were like at 9.8 or 10 point. We were above it, but we
Yeah.
just want to make sure that nothing has filtered through, that we just keep going lower and lower and lower.
I'm also interested, sorry, Charlie, all the rest of my questions are actually for the selectmen, so I don't know if we have.
I'm all set.
I think we're gonna entertain a motion on moving this appropriation request for $50,000 to a town meeting.
Okay, I do have a quick question for Bob, though. That's all
So
right.
do I, if you can hear me.
Wow.
All right, Sarah, go ahead. And then Gary.
Bob, do we have an approximate like the number of appropriations we've done from the undesignated fund for this 2020 so far for this budget cycle? 2023, 2024 budget cycle. I'm just curious how much we've.
I'd have to go back and look, but I know we did one for, it's going to town meeting with this truck if we go there. The $90,000 for the closeout of the demolition project. And we had a steep grant, which was 400 and some odd $1,000, which we get 80% of that back. And then this truck would be the third. I can't think of any other one, sorry.
Okay. If there are, could you email us? But if they're not, that's fine.
Yeah, I can go back and see, and look at the record and see what we've
Yeah.
done so far, but I think it's just those.
Those three.
And the transfer station,
The transfer station was,
There is, that is right, with the truck.
because that, what was it, that was 350, 400,000.
is that this budget cycle or last year?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that was the total number though, not including, we moved some money around. Remember, somebody put aside ahead of time for that.
I just want to make sure, I'm on the same page as you. I just want to make sure that we're not artificially lowering it below what we actually think it is.
Yeah, I'll try and we should try and get a record. If we could get like an email that just lists whatever the 5 are, I can keep track of it going forward, but it would be good for us to just have that for the budget year, just so as we get other appropriations, we've already,
Yeah, I'll try to get that for you, Sarah, for your meeting on the 17th if I could.
that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
On November first, Christine indicated that the current balance was 2.39 million with a proposed increase of 112,000, bringing it up to 2.58 million. So that was as of November 1st.
Did she give the percentage on that?
No.
Do you recall, Amy, whether or not she did?
Yeah, I'm less worried about the total at the moment and just making sure that we're keeping a good track on every time we dip into the undesignated fund, that's all.
Yeah, but we have to maintain at least
Yes,
8.5% before we hit that trigger.
Thank you.
Winona, when you saw that number, does that include the steep money already coming out?
No.
It wasn't. Yeah, I'll see if I can get an updated list for you.
Yeah, we're gonna need to know where we are with that. We can work out the percentage and find out if, because during the presentation, if this does move forward and we have a town meeting on it, we should have, let the town know what the undesignated fund is right now, what the percentage is versus, as to the operating budget. Gary?
Hey, how are you? I have 3 questions. I don't know whether they're Bob's or the Chief's, but I hear a commitment about committing to a new quint down the road, and how much flexibility do we have on that date? First of all, I'm supportive of it in general. I'm just trying to figure out what trajectory of spending we're setting ourselves up for. So in the discussions between the fire company and the selectmen, is there a hard and fast commitment on what year they're purchasing that truck? To the point where other capital needs will have to be pushed out as a result of pulling that trigger, Bob?
Gary, we've had discussions on, we're gonna be going next to the Board of Selectmen 5-year plan anyway, capital plan. I've been discussed more with the selectmen are thinking now as far as the strategy moving forward. So I can answer that question, but there's no agreement right now between myself and the chief as far as what we're going to do, but we've also talked about what best practices moving forward, and we can address those shortly when we go into the next part of this agenda.
Okay, so there's no hard and fast date on when that truck is going to be purchased that we're aware of. That's good. The next one is what happens with so we're going to have twofold because now we have 2 essentially number 2 pumpers. We're going to double the maintenance. Are we going to keep the legacy truck, I'll call it, fully operational, fully inspected, ready to rock, I'm assuming? So your maintenance is going to have an uptick as a result of the additional equipment, right, Chief?
No. So that truck is gonna basically be mothballed, and put in storage because the equipment that is on engine 2 will be placed on the quint.
Okay, good. And down the road, when we do pull the trigger on the new quint, both trucks will go. We're not gonna see anything crazy like we find a way or need to keep it. I'm big in with the new, out with the old, and we seem to find a way to use our old equipment in town.
I understand you're talking about the old brush truck, but,
No, I'm talking the ambulance truck that's delivering lunches.
so.
Sorry.
No, but, no, there is no intended purpose to keep this vehicle. We intend on selling both of these when the new one comes in.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yep.
Anything else from the board? I'll entertain a motion to move this appropriation request for $50,000 for the Quint ladder truck to a town meeting.
Second.
Me, I'm motioning. Gary seconding, since as our mom. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, 6-0. All right, we're on to the presentation of the 5-year capital plan. That's great. I love looking on this phone.
Okay, so the Board of Finance decided they wanted to do something different this year and attack capital first instead of last. So you took away our safety net. So when you tell us to cut the budget by $300,000, we don't have the big dollar amounts we can pull out of the budget. So we really couldn't do it by doing things the way we're doing them right along. We can't take the safety net away up front and then you're gonna tell us to cut the budget 300,000 and we can't do it. So how do we do this? And we also have heard on many occasions that we don't have a long-range plan. I mean, the chiefs mentioned it and the highway garages mentioned that we just keep kicking the can down the road. And the selectmen are at fault of that too, because when you tell us to cut 300,000, it's easier to go and get rid of 1 or 2 trucks than it is to go through 100 line items and take $1,000 from, and $2,000 and $3,000 from different lines and then hurt across the board. And we can take 1 or 2 trucks out and get down to the number you want us to get to. So we thought about how we could attack this in a different way. And we divided the fire company in one bucket, the highway garage and the ambulance in another bucket. And mainly is because the truck expense is so much different. The fire company truck is expensive, could go anywhere from 800,000 to 2 million, depending on what the truck is, or 1.7 million. And typically with the highway garage, we're looking at vehicles that go from maybe 150 to 250. So we thought, if we keep putting money aside, like we were doing, we're saving. And I know a lot of people in this town are good savers. They don't use credit cards and they don't want to spend money unless they know they have it. And I get that philosophy. We also get the philosophy that if you save with the economy we're in now, we're paying a lot more for something 4 or 5 years down the road when we actually get it. Also, the vehicle that we have now, we have to maintain for that extra 4 or 5 years. If we try to sell the vehicle, the old one, when we get the new one in, we're not going to get what we thought we could get for it. So we started thinking, well, again, let's put the fire company aside for a minute, just the highway department and the ambulances, because those trucks are about the same prices. So we said, what if we would go back and look at financing again, and how would that work for us? So I had the highway garage look at taking 2 or 3 of their typical vehicles and what it would cost to finance those over 2 or 3 years. And we were getting a 4.99% finance charge is what we got quoted from the finance company we could be using. So it's called 5%. If we take a vehicle for 3 years and it's a $200,000 vehicle, well, let's look at the, actually, if you got your sheet, we can look at hook lift truck number 17, which I think those are on the tour of the highway department. You saw that. So for 3 years, including the interest, it's 83,208, 83,208, 83,208, and then we have the truck right off the bat, but it's paid in full in 3 years. If we save for that, and let's say that the interest is already built into this, so let's say we saved $75,000 for 3 years. That balloon payment in the last year is not 75 anymore, because that truck's not it's worth a lot more than it was today. 3 years from now, we're going to pay, as the chief said in the fire company, the truck's going to cost more money 3 years from now. Plus, I gave you some sheets you can look at on some of the expenses we paid on maintenance, and you have those sheets. I highlighted some of the trucks we're talking about tonight. And we're looking at over a 5-year period, we'd be paying over $20,000 in maintenance on some of those vehicles. So when you look at the maintenance fees, so you didn't pass those out yet, Mike? But
No, sorry.
it's okay. So when you look at the maintenance fees of what it costs us to maintain a vehicle for 5 years, what the price of the vehicle is in 5 years and what we can get, the money, we're gonna get less money for selling the truck we're trying to get rid of, because as Gary mentions, one truck in, one truck out type of thing. We don't wanna start storing extra trucks at the town garage. It makes sense if we're paying one truck I looked at today, the overall finance charge over 4 years was about 22,500. We paid more than that in maintenance, and if you add up maintenance and inflation and the overall, what we could, so say we could sell the truck for 20,000 now. We're not gonna get 20,000 5 years from now for it. So it made sense for the town financially to start looking back at financing. And also, if we could do, I was looking at 3 vehicles a year, 2 for 3, 2 vehicles at 3-year financing and 1 at 4. We did that every 3 to 4 years. We're cycling new vehicles in, we're keeping the capital down, but we're turning trucks over. Then in 12 years, your fleet's pretty much a new fleet. The oldest truck is 12 years old versus 18, 20, 25 years old, like some of the trucks are now, and we're keeping capital down. We don't do something drastic to start thinking about how we can move capital down the road and have it be affordable, at the same time keeping our fleets, both our fire company fleet and our highway fleets up, and the ambulance. Then we're gonna keep having these problems over and over, and who's ever here 5 years now is gonna be doing the same thing we were doing for the last 5 years. So I appreciate that you forced the issue, but we now have to start thinking out of the box on how we can solve the problem. And this is what we're coming up with. So again, and if you look at, go ahead.
Just while I have you on this particular topic, the chief was talking about, you know, a 4-year lead time where you lock in a price and you pay for it when it's done. Have you talked to Donnie about, you know, hook lift 17? Are these items that you could go out and purchase right now that otherwise?
We can purchase, but they're probably gonna look, you're looking anywhere from 8 months to a year to take delivery. Like the truck that we appropriated for the transfer station. I think we ordered that in November, and it's due in April, maybe in May.
Okay.
So it's not like the fire truck that takes 4 years. I mean, those trucks are so much more equipped and in specialty trucks than a highway garage.
So,
truck is.
I mean, so you've got $83,208 on hook lift number 17 that bakes in interest. But you could have a year that you don't have to pay interest because you could do the full payment. So when the thing comes out,
You
put
could,
it
but
down.
just the way we figured it for these purposes was to add the interest in what it would cost for the 3 years or 4 years and divide it.
Yeah.
So is it exactly, if we went that route, we'd have to come up with the exact number. It's not gonna be plus or minus much besides what we have here for at least for argument's sake
Okay.
of what we're
I'm
trying to
just-
do.
I'm just putting it out there, like you're talking about thinking out of the box, and we were talking about, you know, a lot of money that we're changing for capital here, that every cent counts, you know, so.
So I
Um,
think when you see what it did to the bottom line is, we went from originally, if you remember the numbers we're putting in your original 5-year capital plan, there was some big numbers. I think there were over 400,000, maybe close to 500,000 in the town garage. With the changes we just made, and Brett sent you the new number, I think we got it down, it's at 275,966, which is a far cry from where it was, and that's by still keeping the $50,000 in there for the replace underground fuel storage, because we can't do anything about that. That has to be done by 2030. But by taking those 3 trucks and making 2 of them 3-year financing and 1 4-year financing, it gets the capital down quite a bit. Now I'm gonna include it in because I said it, we thought of it the same way the ambulance. An ambulance, you can get about 10 years out of an ambulance. And we have 2. The ambulance is looking to change the one they have now, the one that they want to get rid of because they've been putting a lot of money. Last year, they put $12,000 in to fix it. This year is about another $10,000 to fix it. So it's $22,000 to keep the oldest ambulance on the road. They're looking to go into a van type of ambulance like American Ambulance used, and have 1 van and 1 box. The van is a less expensive ambulance. It's around $150,000, and that's not just the ambulance, but that's getting it outfitted. Looking at an ambulance if it lasts 10 years and we have 2, that means every 5 years we could pay for an ambulance and get the other one. I will tell you now that the van's the one they wanted now, which comes out to, with interest, it was 32.5. 34.5 rather, for 5 years. So we're paying 22.5 in overall interest, but we've already paid 22,000 in maintenance between what we paid last year and what we're gonna pay this year. And whatever we can sell for now versus 5 years from now, and we have the ambulance. And what's that ambulance gonna cost us? I mean, right now it's around 135,000 before it's outfitted, 130. That same ambulance could be 165 or 170 in another 3 years or 4 years. So we just think that that might be a way for the Board of Finance to start looking at capital, at least in these two categories with the ambulance and the highway department. It makes financial sense to do it. You know, we always hear in North Stonington, we don't give a lot of services to the taxpayer who pays a lot of taxes. The two main services we do give them maintenance on roads, plowing, mowing, cutting, trimming, and on emergency services, getting people to the hospital and getting fires put out. Those are the services we provide. You know, we have a transfer station that we now pay for. But other than that, we don't have a lot that other towns have. We have the kind of services you get in North Stonington, the quality of life is different than what we pay for. You know, the fresh air and low crime rate and dock skies and all the things we talk about why we love the town. But as far as actual services, these are the two areas. It's emergency services and highway department. And if we don't keep up with the times with these, and we haven't, we've actually done a really poor job, I think, over the last 25 years. Now we're in this position, it's only going to get worse. So either we bite the bullet and try to figure out how we can do it without spending a ton of dough, or we just keep going the same way we've been going. Winona?
So, Bob, I have a question, just looking at the highway capital part of this 5-year budget that Brett emailed us. So there's a number of things starting about row 10 under the mower skag that have just disappeared. It's about $1.2 million. Are those in the 10-year plan, or have those just been completely eliminated?
No, they're not eliminated, but using this process of every 3 years going to another 3 vehicles, because as 3 get paid off, we buy 3 more and so on. They've all got pushed back. And now as each purchase comes, so we're not going to be able to buy any new vehicles for 3 years if we use this plan. Which we buy 2 new ones in 3 years and another new one after 4 years. But at that time, that's when the highway department's going to say, okay, so now look at all your vehicles that are still the older ones. Which 3 can we work on now? What are the 3 we need the most? Or what are the 2 we need the most? It's going to be up to them to do that. This is the equipment they told us they needed now, which was the loader, the hook lift, and the plow truck number 3. They had plow truck number 4 on here originally too, but we took that off and moved that back to year number 4. So everything's just got pushed back when it hasn't been eliminated.
Okay, so all of these, again, so like this 1.2 million that starts below the mower skag is just out in what we'll just say beyond 5 years. So they haven't been eliminated from the budget. They're just pushed further. And this same theory is what you're working under, that we do this 3-year financing type thing for all of these.
I mean, some of the smaller stuff like mowers are going to pop up, and they're going to have to explain to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance why they have to add it in this year. But if we're talking $12,000, $15,000, $20,000 pieces of equipment versus $300,000 pieces of equipment, it's a lot easier to digest that than these vehicles.
And then similarly in the selectmen capital budget, when we're looking at some of these larger items, I don't see that much has been pushed forward outside of year 26, 27. There seems to be a significant drop in whatever was being spent there.
Okay, so I've had mine's just a scratched on copy. Maybe Brett gave you we did the updating. But so what is moved, Brian? I'm sorry.
I'm looking to see
Which line item are you talking?
well, I don't know, because I don't know what's changed. I'm just trying to.
I know, and I think part of it is that the Quint truck is in year 3 and engine 4 replacement is in year 5.
Yeah.
I mean, year 4. And then, which are huge, one's $1 million and one's $500,000. So, and I was gonna bring up the same thing. If Chief says they're gonna need to have the Quint and the other tanker
Yeah, so let's talk about that
done
for a
after
minute.
5 years. you know, why aren't we thinking about spreading those costs over to make this a little bit more even?
Because I think if we do the same thing when you're talking about trucks that are over $1 million, it's gonna inflate the capital so much that I don't think the town wouldn't wanna bite the bullet yearly like that. What I think we should do, and again, it's just something we discussed as selectmen, something similar to what Colchester did, is bite the bullet and try to float a bond and have it go to referendum and have the town vote as it's outside of the budget, a separate bond, not this year, but down the road, possibly next year, start talking about, even when we're not in budget season, to say, hey, what do we need to do to get 2 or 3 trucks updated? We're not talking, $200,000. We're talking maybe a $3 million bond or $3.5 million bond. It's again, it's something that the town might have to think about doing down the road and have it be outside the budget, just like we did with the schools. If we want to bring this particular service back up to date, that's what we said we had to do with the schools, and we did it. It was a $34 million project, $24 million after reimbursement. So do we have to start thinking about maybe doing the same thing with the fire company? Of all the departments in town, it's probably the most expensive because it has the most expensive equipment. But is that a possibility to go to the town again, not in this year's budget, but next year's budget, and say, not even the budget separate, a separate referendum to say, does the town have an appetite to float, as Colchester did, a bond to buy maybe the Quint and another truck, the Quint and maybe the R1 rescue truck, whatever those two add up to? I think they add up to about $3 million between the two of them. Is that something we should do? Then the town has a voice, and it's not coming out of undesignated. It's separate, just like it did for the school. It's going to do something to the mill rate as the school did. But does the town want to do that? So that's what we're thinking. And because if we keep doing it the same way, we're just going to get deeper into the hole and we're never going to change. I think this is the group, this is the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen that have to look at things differently.
So you're not talking about replacing multiple trucks every year, right? Because what I'm looking at,
Highway or fire?
whatever, just the first 3 ones you were talking
Okay.
about, the loader, the hook lift, the
Correct.
wheel, right? Because when you lock into an interest to a loan, now that's capital we can't spend on anything else for the next 3-4 years, whatever. So I just did quick math on those 3 on the top. I don't know if the numbers that you have in here include interest or not.
They do.
But even with interest, those 3 things that you would want for I'll withhold my opinion.
But what does that add up to?
$820,000.
I don't see that.
So I did the loader, 8225 times 3, the hook lift, 83,208 times 3, and the wheel plow truck, 8170 times
So that's
4.
the total payment.
Their total amount
Right, not
right now.
divided by year.
Like if
Right.
you wanted to go pay cash, but it wouldn't be that because that's more than it would be
Correct.
if you paid cash. What would it be? Like $100,000 less? Is it about 20 grand?
I'll figure about 5%, because that's what the interest rate is we got.
What's that? No, like it would be less because they put interest in here. I think
So you're saying for 3 years, we'd be tying up about $800,000+ for these 3.
right, you're tying up $800,000.
And what's the alternative for that?
Well, here's my concern is you get ahead this year, but you're doing the same thing that we're doing now, right? So like when we have to buy a new loader in whatever many years that is, we're still paying more than what we're paying now. So by taking things on interest, we're really only catching up this year. Like we're not, like as soon as we go pay for the next one, we're paying more, plus we're paying the interest. And I get your point about the maintenance, but the maintenance isn't a 1-for-1 swap. Like we're still gonna have maintenance even while we're paying interest on the trucks.
So how do you factor in the inflation on a vehicle when we see a truck that costs we'll say 250 now and 300 next year or 2 years from now.
We have to continue to buy trucks regardless, so that's
Correct.
quite frankly irrelevant. Right, like every 5 to 10 years, we're buying a new truck, so you might be catching up now this year and saying, oh, well, look, we saved $20,000 from what we would have paid.
Sarah, I think,
Tomorrow.
I get your point, and I think maybe the demarcation is if you're able to lock in a price now for a vehicle to be bought in several years, then you start stocking away the money to purchase it in the end. If the vehicle is gonna cost a lot more because the lead time's shorter or whatever, or it's just not an item that they do that for, then a reasonable interest rate and paying for it now might be a better option. That's why I think you can think about the difference.
I think inflation is high right now, but overall, if you follow inflation, it doesn't average out to be more than interest. It never does.
So at the end of 3 years, we have these trucks we'd have now. If we order them now, we'd have them sooner than waiting 3 years if we put so much money away. So let's say we pick a $300,000 truck and we put $100,000 away. That last payment of the last year, there's nothing saying that's gonna be 100,000. It could be 150 or 200,000 because now the truck's 400,000. And in the meantime, we're running an old truck that we're putting maintenance in. So I understand what you're saying. At the end of 3 years, does that mean that the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen then could readjust and say, okay, interest rates now high or inflation is low. We shouldn't do this anymore because inflation is low. But at least it gets us moving in the right direction to start replacing some of these fleets that are getting old and we just keep dumping money into them.
So let me ask the question in a different way. If you happen to just magically have $820,000 to go buy those 3 trucks now, cash, would you then finance the next set of trucks, or would you start putting money away now to save for the next set of trucks that you have to buy?
It's a tough question since I don't have the 800,000 magically to buy it. Now, we had the 26 million like Mike thought we had in our government, we'd be all set. I can't.
You
answer
said
that
it, not me.
question. I can't answer that question. I don't know, but if we could buy those trucks now, are you saying would we start saving for the next 3? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
So why don't I have more than 800,000? What if I had 1.6 million, I could buy 6 trucks now? It's not a reasonable question because it's not true. It's not actual.
there's risk in financing anything, right? There's
risk in everything we do.
There's risk in everything, but there's risk in financing that we don't take into account unless you ask yourself the question, if I had the pile of money in front of me, would I finance it or would I pay cash?
If I had the money, I'd pay cash.
So Bob, I think you also, I think you have to also realize, do you want to be debt-free out of this whole thing by paying cash, or do you want to have a newer fleet? That's one of the questions that you have to ask
So
yourself. Because like,
I
if
don't
you use,
understand the question, where we're gonna get the cash to do this? I know it's just, you just put a scenario out that if we had the cash, who would in the right mind would pay interest if we had the cash?
so I'm looking at like the quint that is going to be in year 2026, 2027, that basically, I'm going to use round numbers, $1 million. Why wouldn't, if we're going to lock in a price and we know on that day that's what we want, lock in a price, start saving for it now.
How do you lock in the price and save for it?
Wasn't that just?
How do you, I don't understand.
Was
how
that,
you-
was that?
Who's gonna give you a price locked in that you're gonna save for, that you're gonna buy a truck?
You have to order it for 4 years.
You just said
You have to put a down payment.
You have to still put a down payment on it,
Right,
but then
and
you
then
start
pay-
still
yeah.
saving it, because he was talking about he showed up with a check for $600,000 to go pick it up. You're still ahead of the game down the road.
What's the down payment? Where's the chief? The chief is still here?
What's the down payment? 20%? 10%? You're not.
what about-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Um,
Year 3, you're not dropping $1 million in capital. You're ahead of the game.
You're still, because you're looking at the sheet and you have it in capital. I'm saying I'd like to take it out of capital and float a separate bond that would take it out of the budget.
still have to pay for it.
Oh, you, either way. Well, at least the
So it
tax-
doesn't matter if it's on the sheet or you're gonna be bringing it to referendum and everything. It's gonna, the taxpayers are still gonna be voting on a tax increase. Go ahead.
Just so I can understand where this is going. So it's either put the money aside every year, $80,000, and when the money is accumulated to the point where you can buy the truck, you buy the truck. Or borrow the money now, get the truck and pay interest and principal payment over the next 4 or 5 years.
That's
Right?
two
Is that what we're
scenarios.
talking about?
That's the two
And,
scenarios.
and so the truck lasts 15 years. Is that about right?
Say,
Say
okay.
that?
Yep.
So I don't know, it just seems to me that if we do the method where we put the money aside every year, we're charging people additional taxes to put that money aside, and they're not getting the benefit of it. We're charging higher taxes as a result of that. And then there's no truck, there's no new fire equipment. We're using old equipment and paying a higher tax rate to utilize that older equipment on the hope that we might get a new truck in 5 years.
And the price of that truck is the same in 5 years.
I mean, if you do a present value, it's much better to borrow the money. Absolutely.
I don't disagree with you, Lou, except where if you can lock in the price for 4 years and you spread that, you plan for it, that we're buying this on year, because we've done it 100 times.
But when you lock in what? An anticipated price of the truck 5 years from now?
No, it is
You know,
the price of the truck.
you work with the vendor, say, you're gonna give me a truck in 4 years, it's gonna cost this. And that's in contract.
And so during that 4-year period, you're putting aside 25% of the cost of that vehicle.
That's correct.
And you're taxing people to do that.
We
Now.
were technically doing that with the school anyways, when we were making early payments on the school.
No.
They didn't have a new school at the time.
Right, but but
They
to
were
stick
buying
with
down the interest rate.
But to the truck issue. So we're gonna collect an extra $80,000 in taxes per year for the next 4 years, and we don't have the truck.
Do you have, just like, you're a homeowner. You got a roof that needs to be replaced in 20 years. You can either escrow a certain amount of money and have that money in your account to pay for it at the end, or you're gonna pay full boat at the end. And you might not have it.
But the point is, you're going to spend the money anyway. This way you get the utilization of a better piece of equipment. And you're charging the taxpayers more money for something they don't have the.
I agree with you on things that you can get now. But something that you have to plan for, it's gonna take 4 years to build. If you can lock in the price and you can tell the taxpayers that, hey, on year 2026, 2027, I'm not gonna ask for a $999,000 appropriation. I'm gonna say, we need to spread this over 4 years and we're gonna pay for it in the end, everyone. And that's easy for me to explain. Not that the capital budget in year 2026, 27, we went from 842 to 1.05 to 1.7. You know, and I'm just telling you, look, having done this for 6 years, you know, this is where people are like, it's too much. What we're trying to do is get a plan that says, here, we have a plan and we're gonna stick to the plan, just like Chief Steinhardt just said, like Colchester does. We're trying to come up with a solid plan. We're telling the Board of Selectmen, after years and years and years of us telling them no, 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 and them having to cut it out, and you know, the town's safety and the town's infrastructure has suffered for it, that let's come up with a solid plan that we can go to the taxpayers and say, yes, we're gonna put here, we're gonna try to get this evened out a little bit, so you know, you can anticipate how much we're gonna pay for capital, and here's why we're doing it.
Well, I understand that part. But it's just a matter of whether or not you're going to have the asset you're paying for anyway, now or later.
Lou,
No, I know.
So
look at it, let's look at it this way, I think, if I can figure out. Bob's talking about financing the smaller items, having them paid for 3 or 4 years that we have now to use, and they're gonna last 10 or 15 years. There's a pump truck that the former people bought on what you're talking about, 1.2 million, that we're stuck for another 7 years paying for it. That by the time it's paid for, we could have bought 2 for them, and by 10 years, it's gonna be ready to be changed again or close to it.
So that's.
It won't be, don't, Charlie, I don't, you know what I'm saying? It's getting older because we're stretching payment.
Well, you recall
Way-
that was a
The way
7
Bob's going for it. I
That's
know,
why you
but
don't
it
do it
just-
unless
it
you
just-
lock in. If you can't lock in the price, then
Right, so
Financing works.
what you're suggesting, Charlie, is in 3 or 4 years or 2 years, we lock the price with a down payment, and then we work towards that payment so that there's not a big end and we're not paying a big chunk of interest on 1.2 million.
So I've been doing this for going on 5 years now, 6 years. The biggest hurt that people have is the big payments. If you show up and you say, hey, we have to go buy this, it's $500,000. They're gonna be like, well, why didn't you save for it? Why didn't you pre-plan for it? It's not, hey, we need this, and then we have to worry about the finance. And they're like, why didn't you plan up to it and then buy it? And then, yes, you're gonna have it, but at least they know, hey, on this date, we're gonna get something and it's gonna be a smaller payment. You don't want to have a huge pay increase on that. And that's what we're looking at in 2026, 2027.
Well, and just adding to what Dan said, I think the hardest thing about when we go to balance the budget, like when we're doing our budget, is there's a very large number right now that is redemption of debt. That's money that's locked up for the next 20 plus years, right? And every time we add to that, that increases our risk by reducing our flexibility. So like an actual example that's not about the fire company is the hand truck, the walking trailer for the transfer, the floor trailer for the transfer station. We encumbered about $40,000 for that because they needed to replace it. I forget exactly how much it was, but we encumbered money for it. So we had it split into 2 payments. Then the transfer team came up with an amazing plan to actually save money by doing things differently. We unencumbered that money, which had we financed that, we would have been stuck with it and had to sell it. And then we used that to do the new plan. So my biggest concern is there's a lot of risk. A lot of it is not obvious in the moment, but one of the things is it reduces our flexibility and what we're able to do. If we have a year where taxes go down significantly, now we don't have the flexibility to move capital items around because we've already committed to them for 5 years. And that is my biggest concern, especially for this town. We do not have a large cash flow in this town. Everything that we encumber with debt is squeezing our cash flow. And we're going to be those people with the really expensive cars in the driveway that can't afford to get the roof fixed. That's my concern.
does Gary have anything to say? Usually does.
I gotta tell you, I am enjoying this conversation. I got nothing to add. These are all really, really good perspectives. Sarah, you keep that down.
So I just want to talk to Sarah a little bit about her scenario. So I understand exactly what you're saying. So tell me how we do things different than we've been doing for the last 20 years, and that when we wouldn't be in this position tonight. I guarantee these conversations have been had many times over the last 10 or 15 years, and we always go back and do the same thing over. You know what they say about doing the same thing over and over. So, and you end up in a bad spot.
When you do the same thing over and expect the same results, then you're crazy. Yeah. No, I get it. I'm not saying there's an easy answer.
So that, again, I don't think there's an easy answer either. And we know what the town has, and who knows what's going to happen in the future, but the town has grown in the last 3 or 4 years. It's grown on the commercial side. It's grown on the grand list side. Could something devastating happen? Yes, it could. And it might not either, but I mean, if you plan for every scenario that could happen, we're never going to go anywhere. We're just going to be stuck in the mud. I think that Lou made a really good point of when we charge people for money of something they can expect down the road, we're charging them up front. Now, we actually do that with the undesignated fund. We're holding $2.5 million of taxpayer money, thinking we may need it someday in a rainy day fund, right? So we do that already. And I think that we're just trying to do kind of the same thing on a smaller scale with these trucks. But I think if we just, by the way, that Quint now, I think it's closer to 1.3 million, not 999,000 that was in here. And if we did do with the 1.3 on the Quint, and we said, okay, we're gonna order it tomorrow. We're gonna get it in 4 years and pay it in 4 equal payments, or pay it at the end, but save for 4 equal payments. What are you gonna do with the rescue truck, which is 1.7 million?
The rescue truck,
Yeah, the one we're refurbishing, the new one's 1.7 million.
where's that?
So we had originally a 75, 100, and 100, so we're, maybe in 10 years, we'd have enough money to buy it if it doesn't go up in price in 10 years.
You're talking about
Refurbishing might get us another.
the
5
rescue
to
truck
10 years.
refurb?
Yes.
What's your question on that?
So my question is, eventually we're gonna need a new one. If we're refurbishing this one to get a few more years out of it,
Yeah,
and a new one's worth 1.7 today.
yeah. When do we want the, Chief, when do we want that new one? This is part of the 20-year plan. We're talking about a 5-year plan right now, Bob. There's obviously gonna be a 20-year plan. Right now, we're trying to work through this for 5.
Refurb engine 2, it's good for 10 more years. So if you spend $300,000 on a paint job and some lighting upgrades to the rescue, $300,000 for 10 more years out. Or do you replace it instead of refurb? That's what you gotta look at. $300,000 is basically first year payment on potentially $3 million bond. So if you look at, 10 years out of the truck, you still have to spend the full price at the end. Or do it with Bob brought up, your bond effect, you do trucks, you start rolling bonds every 10 years, you never have this problem again. Make a $300,000 payment every year towards your debt fire apparatus. You do 2 trucks at a time, you have 6. You do 2 at a time, trucks will never be 30 years old. 30 years old. Yeah. I've been doing the budget process for over 15 years now. Every time we say we're gonna save for something, we cut. Because we have this unrealistic number of trying to maintain that $500,000 a year. It's unrealistic. Our capital has gone up, the cost of everything's gone up, truck parts, maintenance, cost of living. $500,000 is fine, but I started with 15 years ago. Today is unrealistic. That number needs to fly. And we cannot operate as a town continuing to maintain the integrated number. In my opinion, that is the 500,000 way integrated where today's number is.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chief, but I think trying to finance that stuff is going to force our hand in terms of choices we're not going to want to make. Because the reality is we have to figure out a way to live within our budget. And if we encumber that much debt, now we can't make any choices, or our choices are limited in 2025 and 2026 and 2027, et cetera. It just snowballs from there. I think we do have to think about how we do things differently. And I do think it's entirely possible we have to spend more money on capital than we're spending now. I agree with you on that. I think financing is like a knee jerk. I'm not implying a knee jerk. I think it's a scenario that looks and feels appealing right now, but when we're all sitting around this table in 2 years and 3 years from now, and we're looking at, instead of I forget what our debt number is. It's like, I forget, when we look at our budget, our overall budget, it's like, I forget exactly what we're paying.
5%?
No, like the debt, the redemption of debt.
Oh.
I want to say it's somewhere around a couple million. It's like 1.7 million a year or something.
I don't think it's 1.7, but it's
I don't
close.
remember.
1.5?
Yeah,
1.4?
it's what, that's how much we're paying a year on debt now. Every time we add this there, we're just adding more to that. I'm not saying we don't, I would be very curious at what this looks like if we bought the entire loader in 2024 and 25 cash, and the entire hook lift in 2025 and 26? What if you spread it out that way? Like, I don't know, because I can't do that math now, but that's another scenario we could look at.
That's a huge, it's a large number. So I have to say that, I felt like you did in the beginning, until you see how much really needs to be replaced over a period of time. So when we started looking at this and we said, okay, we'll start putting money aside, and in 4 years, we can get the trucks that we need today. And in the trucks that we need in 4 years, now we're not going to get those and replace those for 8 years. And then you realize that plan doesn't work. There's no way to make that work, because those trucks that you need today that you're not getting for 4 years, and there's some that you really need today. Now, I'll agree, there's not on this list, not everything needs to be replaced exactly at that schedule, but I'm pretty hard on, as this other selectmen know, I'm pretty hard when we go through this to say, do we really need this? What other options can we have? But when you look at the numbers and you also know this community, and know this community will not like a big tax increase. So yes, our capital dollars might not be as high as they should be if we were to do it another way, but that budget will not go through. I've been in town long enough, and I've been involved long enough, and then we are in the same predicament. So what we are doing is breaking it down and saying most of them are 3 years. So we're out of those in 3 years. And then at the end of that, we're still going to have to buy those other trucks. So then we do the same process on those. So that 4.7% that we're actually making 5% in our non-lapsing count, with the treasurer just redeposit that, it almost kind of washes that financing out.
For now.
For now, and it could go up, could go down. But the problem is, these trucks need to be replaced. They have to. And unless, and I don't know about this Board of Finance, but previous boards of finance did not want to dip into the undesignated account to say, hey, we need to buy these 3 trucks. Can we get $300,000 out of the undesignated account? Past Board of Finances would say no. And then it would go to a town meeting if for some reason Board of Finance said yes, and that might go down. The reality of the situation is, you guys wanted a plan, and we wanted to come up with a plan for you to long range try to handle these situations. And that's what this does. Is it the most ideal way? No. But it's the way that we can react and plan accordingly, and also get the equipment to utilize, as Lou said, now. So you're talking 4.7%, I think is what the interest rate was on most of these. That if we kept them in the undesignated account or in the capital account, and we're getting 5% in the bank, or we're getting use of these items now, and in 3 years, they're paid off, we have them for 10 to 15 years, and then we have to start on the bottom part of these lists of, like we moved dump truck replace number 4, we move that to 27, 28, 29, because it's a cycle. And now we're in the cycle of replacing these, and eventually we will have a break. So if they're lasting 10 years to 15 years, after 3 years, we're done. Once we have that cycle, then maybe we can work on putting some money aside to go forward. But unless you want to take a big chunk out of undesignated this year to manage this and to start with the savings plan, this really seems like one of the only ways to make it work to get what we need. And then in the future, next year, like Bob said, we have to address some of the bigger purchases, and like other towns do, and look at bonding. It's not an easy task, but when you look at everything that needs to be replaced and you sort through the reality, just like you heard about the ladder truck from the other town. There are presentations from fire, highway, and towns, probably our town, that says, hey, this truck's really bad. Look at these pictures, because that's what they did in Colchester, and they got a new truck out. But we pushed back on these. We pushed back on the fire company. We pushed back on the highway. We toured. We saw the rot. We saw what needs to be done. And unless we come up with a plan and stick to it. So in an ideal world, yeah, you put this money aside, and in 3 years, you're buying. The problem is, in 3 years, we might not be here. You guys might not be here. In the next, next people in your seats say, you know what? I don't believe in that plan anymore. I'm going to push that aside. The fire company doesn't need those trucks. or the town doesn't need those, we'll go down to 2. And then that plan, and that's what we've done in the past, honestly. I've seen it time and time again where we just say we're gonna do it, we put some money aside, and then all of a sudden we take all that money and use it for something else because somebody else has a different idea. And
Can I,
Go ahead.
so I just did some quick math, right? And if you look at just the first 3, again, I'm not,
Yeah.
this is your thing. So I don't know how exactly you want to lay this out. But in the first 3 columns, the 82,251 for the loader, 83,208 for the hook lift, 81,070, that adds up, those 3 line items adds up to
so we
$246,000.
lowered the loader to 61.
I know, but I'm looking at your old scribbled sheet, so
Okay.
I apologize. But that adds up to 261, which to me says, well, I just added what the loader was by multiplying 82,000 times 3, because that's what you have.
Yeah.
And that's $246,000. So you could go right now, based on this sheet, if we were just looking at these top 3 rows, you could buy the loader this year, you could buy the hook lift the next year, and then you could buy the plow truck on year 3, cash.
You're right. You could. But then we don't have the plow truck to plow Kingswood. That
I'm not touching any other money than what you want to finance.
you are because you're putting off getting those items.
He's looking to get these 3 right now.
We're looking to get these.
Cause
3
you can, how much are you?
He needs them 3 this.
We're
Yeah, but
getting-
That's the point.
That's the point. We're looking to get those now, not in 3 years, not in 4 years.
Mhm.
so the
Now.
hook lift could not wait 7 months.
It's not 7.
Well, it's
It's long.
December. We're halfway through 2023.
So this takes effect.
this
in
is,
July.
you're right,
So
this is-
takes effect in July,
yeah.
and then we have to order it after that. So you're a year out. And you're not getting everything. So when you add it, so if you look at it, it's costing us 5% to get the equipment now. 4.7.
It's, what's the real dollars though? That's 20 grand per vehicle, right? So when we talk about like you're taxing people for stuff you don't have yet, we're also, how much interest do we want our town to pay? Like ultimately, we're breaking even
So
now,
if
but this
that-
is the first year in how many years we've been making money on our undesignated fund,
Right,
ever.
but then why have the designated fund so high? So
It's
that's a
not so
debate.
high.
Well, it depends on what town
We
you look
lost a
at.
bridge a couple years ago. What did that cost us? $3 million.
I get it. And where did some of that money came from? We also wiped out some of the money we had in for other projects and other equipment. So if you look at, we put money away for equipment in the past. When something like that comes, we wipe that out. And
So
we
the-
still kept the undesignated account when we built that up. But
Well, you can't, not technically.
what's that?
Technically, when you undesignate something, it goes into the undesignated fund and then you have to take money out of the undesignated fund. You can't take money from one line item and just put it towards another thing.
No,
I-
it's transfer line.
I just
item.
want to make a comment first there. The first,
Not when it's designated for something particular.
the first
Yeah.
5-year budget that they gave us, if you have that, everything is lumped together, one purchase at a time. So the math you're looking for, we already have, if that's helpful, including the items that I asked about that are now pushed beyond the 5-year plan, but are still in the plan.
And the problem really does lie few years out. So the equipment that we need in 4 years, we won't get for 8 if we start now putting money aside. And if you want to put the real number of money aside that you need to make it happen in 2 or 3 years, that what you'll do to people's mill rate is just, it'll be astonishing what you do. And what we'll have to do is cut the school budget, cut the other budget.
Well,
So
I
that's
don't-
what it
I-
comes down to.
What do you mean by that, Brett? I mean,
So what, if you're saying, hey, let's buy the items outright, not finance, and pay for a few of them now, a few next year.
okay, so you're talking about like, if all the things that we need now, if Sarah's saying, well, let's buy it right now and then the next 3 years and it costs $800,000 for each of those or whatever. I understand what you're saying. So I think what I would like to ask, I need a couple of questions first to the chief. On engine 4, we have $500,000 out on fiscal year 27-28. Is that when you plan to because you also have that, again, the Quint in, 4 years from now, that we're not technically planning to have that in 4 years, paying for that in 4 years from now, if you purchase it at the end. Right?
Lost.
Okay. It's in this, it's in this capital plan 4 years from now.
Right.
At 999,000, which
Yep.
we all agree isn't happening.
Well, we agree that the price is low. I agree with that, but we should be making a purchase before the end of this budget. Or signing a contract.
Signing the contract. Right. So what I'm
Which
trying to,
locks you into the money anyways, so.
But not,
If I can clarify, just 'cause I think where you're going is, if this Quint truck is gonna last 3 years.
5 years.
5
I was gonna say
5 years. In 26, 27, where you've got the $1 million.
Right.
Is that the year that you're saying we will sign the contract and put the 10% down?
That's what I would look, that's what I.
Right, so instead of $1 million, it's going to be $100,000.
correct.
In that year.
Yeah.
And then 3 years from then, let's guess,
Right.
the other.
So we already know that
balance-
it's in the wrong year.
Right, so now we're talking 8 years from now. By the time we have to write the big check.
Agreed. And which was, I'm saying that,
That's
that,
what- 'Cause I was
Lou, you're right.
confused on that.
And that's what I'm saying. It's in the wrong year. So
That
my,
number
my,
should-
my proposition is this, and I don't, and I want the Board of Finance, I want every member's like real take on this, on their appetite for avoiding these peaks and valleys in capital to try to balance things out a little bit, that in a easily digestible manner, where, we know this 99's not there, 999 is not there in 26, 27. So that would take that down to like $800,000. What?
It'd be 100,000 for a down payment.
Correct,
Or like
right,
100
all right,
and-
100,000. Well, listen, there might,
might
I think
be
that,
more.
that this whole 99, the money for the Quint, the 10% has to start if this thing is gonna last 5 years. This is just my thinking. So, it's got to be ordered next year. So $100,000 got to be in next year's budget for the Quint. All right, and then you start putting money away each year, so that at the end of the year, you're 1.2.
Depends on what next year's price or the year after that's price. is gonna be.
Right, so then you got to break it out,
Talking
and then
a year and a half.
for when that thing is purchased in year, 20, 30, 31, we have the money for it. And so that means that whole 26, 27 fiscal year that's seems to go on this big, huge peak of 1.7 compared to 8, it's now flattened. And so that goes to my question on this engine 4 replacement. How reasonable is that $500,000 number?
Probably low.
All right, and when do you need that?
Again, apparatus is 30 replacement cycle, the maximum age of it. So that's, what year is that? 2000. So it's got another 6 years on it.
Okay, so we put that price in year 6, when we gotta buy it, come back, do you think you can order that, put a down payment on it, and then pay for it at the end?
That's typically what truck vendors do. So
Okay.
your down payment.
So that's what we do, Sarah, on that, but the things that we need now, financing is not a bad option on these things that we need today, that and you can't blast the whole, there's only so much that people are gonna tolerate in this year with capital raise. I think we all in agreement, and I'd like everyone's opinion since we're starting with this, including you, Gary. What the appetite is on raising this capital from where we are, which is generally 400 to 500, to something in the 800 to 900 to 950. Where we then can spread that out over the next 5 to 6 years in a organized manner that we can sell to the town.
You skipped a few numbers there, Mike. I'll comment first. You went from
Okay.
400 to 8 or 9. There's a few numbers in between. Why such a big bite?
I'm just looking at the capital budget right now, Gary, as presented. The first one is 842, and it, that's for this year. And I'm just using their numbers. That's actually probably less than 842. I'm sorry. The updated one, Brett sent this on the phone, which is so fun to watch. I'm sorry, what is it? There you go. So say for instance, the next year's budget's 8 and then it's 888 and we want to lower it all, then maybe the down payment happens this year and, you know, however the math works out, Gary, that, and I agree with you. I'm not saying it has to be, you know, that high. It's just, what is it actually going to work out to if we spread this out in a really well thought out way? Lou?
I think one of the critical aspects of this has to be that when you're doing a capital budget, that the financing of the capital assets, the term should be much less than the expected life of the asset. So if you're looking at a fire truck that's going to last 20 years and you finance it over 7, say, then taxpayers are indeed paying in advance for the benefit of this equipment that they're going to have for 20 years. But at least they're getting an initial benefit. So you can't do a capital budget where you take a 5-year asset and pay for it over 10. But if we do this so that the assets are properly identified by term and we match the financing to that term or better, and that should lower the cash flow that's required by the town to service that debt than what it would be otherwise to maintain these funds that are in a way arbitrary because we don't know what the future is going to give us. This way, the certainty is, you know what the equipment's going to cost. You know what it's going to cost. We don't know what the trucks are going to cost 10 years
Can I
from now.
make one
5
last
years.
comment? I'll leave you alone.
That's it.
So for the past 15 years, I've submitted a 5-year and a 20-year, and actually out to a 30-year capital plan. And all these trucks were spread out. At one point, we only had ambulances in. So you had all emergency services in a plan.
I recall.
I submit a plan every year. I update it. When a truck pulls in, 30 years out is when it gets replaced. I put it on the schedule. In 2012, we refurbished engine 2, the one that we wanted to replace with a Quint back then. At the time of 2012, we wanted to buy that Quint. It was $750,000 to buy a brand new Quint. Today, we're talking $1.2 to $1.4 million. If we would have followed the plan that we had set in place for over 20 years, we would have had it done now and we wouldn't have been paying a $1.4 million ticket. So it is critical that we come up with a plan, like the selectmen have come up with a plan now to address the town highway department's needs. Start it and roll it. It's going to have to be a reality of moving things forward. Fire company, we have a rolling stock. We got to start replacing things. And if we address it by spreading it out over time, like they're doing financing, it makes sense. Yes, it costs a little more money. A lot of us finance things. We have to, because right up front, the town can't afford the big bill. But by financing it, it does spread it out. Back to the tanker, it was a $600,000 purchase. It was financed for 10 years. It cost the town an additional $100,000 because the town couldn't afford a $600,000 payment in one time. Because historically, we've never saved for anything. Every time we say we do it, first year we start saving, and next year we need to cut the budget and take the money away. We never commit to anything. So we need to commit to a capital long-range plan and actually do it. That is preach this to the selectmen's meeting, and many other years I've said this, is if we don't follow a plan, we're doomed. We're heading down a road we're never going to address anything, and our infrastructure of the town is just going to be crippled. I'll just leave it at that. I won't bother you anymore.
No, we're not bothering us, Charlie. We're
So kind of where Charlie was coming from, I'm going to come from the same place. You gave us some direction a while back and you said, we want to do things different this year. And that's what we've done. We've looked at capital, we've done it different. We've moved the cot in front of the homes, right? That's what we've done. And we know we've just got rid of our safety net at the end when you tell us to cut the budget by a large amount of money. So we thought this is the best way to do something different with what we came up with. I want to know now from the Board of Finance, I didn't expect you to vote on this. So I think you can discuss it and somewhere down the road, decide to adopt it or not, or you're going to come back to the Board of Finance. Board of Selectmen. I'd like to know what you're going to ask us to do. Are you going to ask us to come up with another plan, something that's more palatable? Or are you going to ask us to just scrap the whole thing and go back to do the budget the way we did it the last 5 years and we'll put it back at the end? And so I don't know what you want us to do at this point.
I don't know if we're gonna have to answer right now, Bob, but by the
I
end,
don't think,
by
I'd
the end of the
expect you
night,
to.
by the end of the night, I'd like to have at least some direction as to how we want to proceed. Or if it's not tonight, it will be, within the next couple of meetings.
Yeah, and that's fine. I didn't expect you to stay to midnight tonight discussing this, but because I know I'm not gonna be here. You can tell me tomorrow how we made out. But I think that it makes sense to at least think about doing something differently. And it may not sound like it's 100% perfect. Maybe it isn't, but it's different than what we've done in the past.
Ultimately, you will have to own the capital budget. I mean but we're trying to we will give you guidance. I'm looking at things in the way that I see capital from what I've experienced in 6 years with things getting cut. And the disappointment where in past administrations, there were capital ad hoc committees that were created and did really look at this and then bring them forth. And then there's no appetite to bring those plans to the people. And then last year, this board with, Lou's just coming on, but this board generally got tired. We're sick of tired of that issue happening. I think that's what, and we talked about this right at the end of the budget season, that capital has to be something we have to do something to change the kick in the can. And I think everyone here on the fire company feels the same way because they've gone, like the chief just said, they've had this plan that never gets put forward. I'm just telling you from my perspective, it's something that I'm feel strongly about changing. And my feeling would be to find something where we're going to tell the taxpayers, this is roughly where it's going to be for the next 5 years. And here's how it's going to be spent.
I think maybe we should tell them how it's gonna be over the next 20 years, not 5 years.
I'd love that, but you gave us
But-
5.
But no, because that's what you had to ask for, that we're giving you a 5-year plan, but it has to roll into a bigger plan. Because we're not gonna buy 12 trucks in 5 years. So all those imaginary ones after truck number 3 come in future years.
I agree with you. And if there's one, and should there be 1 year where it's an impossible task to stay within this realm, then maybe, yes, you talk about a bond at that time.
I think we should be talking about a bond prior to that. I think a bond is, if you look at a lot of towns, that's how they get their big dollar equipment when they have fire stations and they have bigger trucks. I think it's something that we should talk about not for this year. I'm talking about maybe for next year.
all right, for this purposes right now, I gave my opinion, and I think that we should try to get a more even capital plan using myriad techniques, whether it's financing or putting money away each year after a down payment, as long as you can lock in the price. And I think we can come up with something palatable to sell to the taxpayers.
So the plan we came up with tonight is around 600 and some odd thousand, correct?
Right.
For 1 year.
For
For
one,
1 year,
For
exactly.
1 year.
I understand, for 1 year.
so
But if you look at that sheet I gave you, it kind of stayed in that 600 to 700 range for the next 4 years, didn't it?
You went from 638 to 738 to 1.62 to 1.
That's because I
One.
wanted to address, there's $1 million in there for one truck. I wanted to address that separately in a bond. I'm looking at,
But we don't have your plan about talking about the bond. This is what was submitted to us.
Hmm.
Was this is our list. This is how we're gonna put it out there. You keep talking about bond. How long what are the details on this bond that you keep talking about?
we haven't looked at it yet.
So we all knew at the end of summer, we were gonna be talking about big numbers. We all knew that. If you didn't think that, you haven't been doing budget. This should have been talked about. Bonding should have been one of the options that you guys either presented, or that is one of the ones that you should have brought to us. Saying on this year, we have to buy this many trucks, so we should be bonding these trucks and everything. This is the plan going forward.
We're not trying to bond any trucks this year.
No.
We're thinking
I'm
there's
saying-
an option for us down the road, Dan. It wasn't for this year. It's this year's budget is this year's budget, what we.
But
what we
like you
proposed.
said, we're basically taking the large chip off the table, saying, hey, once this is gone, we can't cut the budget. Really, we're hogtied really tight. The option needs to be out there, like, hey, on this year, this is how we're gonna alleviate it. The chief was talking about, well, hey, if you did bonding every 10 years and everything, you'd have new trucks and everything, you wouldn't have to worry about this. I don't see that here. We see a 5-year plan. We've discussed about having you guys get a capital plan back when we ended the budget.
Yeah, and we haven't had a finance director in about 8 weeks.
Then,
I'm not
yeah,
gonna give you. so
We're
we
not,
give-
we're not here to, I don't want to, we're not here to disparage either side. This is, we're talking about for the first time. I'm just saying for how I felt. You know, I don't have a problem with financing if it works. I don't have a problem with putting money out if it works. I don't have a problem with if your idea is to throw a big bond out there every 5 years. Cause that's what what's the capital budget requires over that 20 years. And let's see that in the next couple weeks. You know,
The last
my thought was that we would sit there, we would try to spread this out as best we can. So we have a budget that is roughly, there's no huge peaks and valleys in it.
When we last spoke to the Board of Finance in early December, our parting words were, and keep it at $500,000. That's what the capital was. There was a member of the Board of Finance that said, keep it at 500. That was our marching orders, 500,000. So tell me how we can do anything different than we've done in the past at $500,000.
You can't.
So that's it. So I mean, I'll ask more questions, but we're just going back and forth now. So yeah, I think it'd be good for the Board of Finance to at least think about what we've come up with. Maybe we can come to some sort of
Agreed.
compromise.
I love, all the work that you guys have done, I appreciate. I do. And I'm just saying that, you know, I'm seeing some numbers in here that, you know, aren't, it should be in the fiscal years that they're in. And maybe I'm looking at the wrong one, but even, you know, the 1.6, you know, I can see that if we plan accordingly, you know, because you're either paying now or paying later. In the bond, you're paying over time and you're paying the interest on it. We have a way to say, all right, we're gonna pay a little bit more here and evenly over time, and we're gonna have what we need in 2030. All this stuff is gonna be, we're gonna have it.
If you want to give us we meet on the 9th, we meet on the 16th. You meet on the 17th. We have 2 meetings between now and the next time you meet. If you want to tell us, go ahead, come up with a picture that shows me 10 years, 20 years. But what you'll consider financing, you consider possible bond on the road, we'd be glad to do that for you. But if you can tell me to come up with the same thing that we've come up with the last 10 years, we don't need to because you already have it.
Understood.
Thank you.
So Gary here from the Ether. Bob, Nicole, and Brett, I've been watching this from afar and I appreciate all the fine work you've done. I went to the previous meeting before this one just to sort of hear where you guys were and how you were working through things. And it was an impressive level of engagement and exchange between all of you. The number that I think I heard 675, is that what I'm hearing? Mike?
638 for next year, for this
Yeah,
year.
I you know, when, and it was me speaking off the cuff and Mike pointed that out to me, that was not official Board of Finance guidance.
It was not.
Where you landed, I'm not appalled by. I do think we need to see a little bit more rigor around getting the spending right and the triggers in the right years. But you wanted my opinion, Mike? I'm okay with the 635.
What's that?
I'm okay with the number.
The 638?
Yep. We have to start somewhere and we know we were underspending and we know it's a big gulp. But let's start the ball rolling. It can go up or it can go down, but we have to step off.
Yeah, Gary, and you know, we'll take everyone's opinions here. My question is, you know, from your perspective, you know, are we looking at a peaks and valleys type plan, or are we looking at a more of a even keeled plan? in your mind?
I would like to see a levelized plan, but I don't know if they've had enough time to fully understand the triggers and how far things can be pushed or pulled to get that levelized plan.
Agreed. Lou,
The,
you all, are you done, Gary?
Yep,
Gary,
I had already gone on mute. Thank you.
Yep.
I would only suggest one way to look at this. Having put these numbers in the different years in the capital amount that it would have taken financing these, one thing might be to keep the finance separate and to look at those assets that need to be replaced at what time. And then given what needs to be replaced, if 3 trucks need to be replaced now, show it in this year and how you would finance it at this year. Or can we spread the trucks that we need to replace out over 1 or 2 or 3 years? That changes the dynamic of the entire process.
I think that's, aren't they already doing that on the
Yeah.
top, on the
If
highway
I'm-
capital?
As I'm looking at it here, they're showing those are the, well, no, there's the 3 trucks. Then there's a $50,000 item here for underground storage, and then there's a $96,000 amount for a truck. Right?
Yeah, 96,000's out for this year.
I'm looking at what I was handed tonight, so.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't. I was looking at what was handed out.
Yeah,
tonight.
there's, that 96 is not in this year's, budget.
Then.
And
I
the
stand
top one
corrected.
is,
I'm looking at this now, this
Yeah.
corrected piece here.
yeah.
Oh, this is original.
Look, did you get an email from
No,
Brett?
it's not gonna come through.
Yeah, I'll show it. Give me my.
So, well, here's the, you can just
I
have
got
my
this.
computer.
That's okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Carl. Just take a look at it, Lou, and then you can
Um,
come back, I'll come back to you.
You wanted opinions.
Yes.
I think we're in the ballpark with this, with what they come up with. When we started, or when I watched a few years ago before I even got on here, every time they come along, you cut off everybody that needed equipment. And everything else got moved up as far as school, maintenance, buildings. I think right now, we need to come up with a plan that we're working on right now and settle it so that it has to be there all the time, lump sum. That's what needs to be done every year up front. If for this year and next year, everybody else that has already been getting their things because it got cut has to survive without less so that we can get this started, I think that's where they should be. In other words, everybody else on all their budgets should be 0 or very minimum increase so that we can get this started and locked in place.
I think that's
That's my,
that,
that's my personal.
I
feeling.
think that's the guidance that we, that everyone, hopefully,
Yeah, so this,
the Board of
so the-
Selectmen and the Board of Education understands that capital is gonna
so
be
the
taken
can
more.
doesn't get kicked again.
Understood, and I can't promise that they're gonna do that, but I think that's probably understood with these 3 at least. You have some,
Regarding your peaks and valleys, I think as a board, from our discussion, we're not looking for peaks and valleys of this capital plan. I will say those 27, 28, or actually, yeah, starting 26, that number with the 99, so this came in and we reworked the beginning of the plan. Those last 2 years, we didn't spend a lot of time
Okay.
on, because Bob did bring up the bonding, and we thought that would be a good option to look into, but only look into. So I would say from this plan here, except for the 999, those first 2 years are pretty spot on for what we envision. 3rd year is pretty close. Those last 2 years, we haven't focused on those as much because of the timeline. But I want you guys to rest assured, we don't want peaks and valleys, because when I first looked at this and I saw we jump up to 1.7, I'm like, that's impossible. There's no way we can ever stomach that.
can you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But it also is a plan that you guys need to help and own this as well, because we work together. We're all in this. Everybody that was here, the fire department, the highway, the town, the residents, we're all in it together. So we're here to work with you, not against you. and we hope-
100%.
We hope that's the same, but you guys have to own this plan too, and
That's why I'm
we're
trying,
open
yeah,
to
we,
all
we,
of this.
this is the first time we're able to discuss it. You know, what I'd like to see is, you know, after, and I'll come to your next meeting or the meeting after that and to talk, you know, to look at something where, you know, on that, in the whole selectmen capital, you know, this year and next year, you have money set aside where it's gonna go towards those deposits. And then year 3, 4, 5, we're putting money towards those big ticket items to buy in the years that that they say they need them. So
Yeah.
that's all I'd like to see. And it's gonna increase us a little bit this year and next year, but then 3, 4, and 5 are not as huge as they are. That's what I would like to see.
Right.
I don't know if everyone else does too.
I'm gonna broach a subject that I'm sure I'm gonna I'll regret. Uh, um, the Wheeler Library. I have a feeling that feel it like the snow coming this weekend. A large number is gonna come from them. And that is going to be something that is going to throw this, as much as we're thinking that this is somewhat palatable that we're gonna be able to do, that is going to be a large tax increase in itself. If we're talking that this is gonna be a large increase right here, that on top of that is going to be a large ask, I got a feeling. So I think, yes, we're settling that, hey, you know, we're feeling the warm fuzzies on this one, but there is something looming down the road. I know that we won't know that probably till what, March, April timeframe, but we just have
We
to.
bring that up in our
Same.
two selectmen meetings ago, but then Bob mentioned at our selectmen meeting tonight that they are coming to our next meeting to present their act.
Yeah, so, okay, so it's gonna be sooner than I thought. So I think we just need to we look at this, we think about it, we digest it and everything, but also understand that there is going to be an ask down the road that's going to affect these numbers.
Amy?
I just want to say, first of all, my opinion, because that's what
Oh.
Mike asked. So I'm in agreement with Gary that the 638 is palatable. I agree with Carl. I'm having trouble understanding why some of these numbers can't be more fluid and spread out. For the past 8 years, I've seen the fire department bring up their plan, not on this committee, but just as a townsperson and taxpayer, and they really do have the ideal plan. They've brought it to us year after year. And I've supported them before I was even on here because the protection of our town and the people in it, we're bringing more people to our town, we're bringing more businesses to our town. We have a brand new school with glass on the second story that cannot be opened. The windows don't open. So if we don't have at least 2 operating ladder trucks and there's a fire somewhere in our municipality, how are we going to say? I'd rather say, oh my gosh, we had to raise our capital expenditures than say, sorry, we couldn't make it, or we couldn't make that work. I have a hard time not providing for the safety of our town and the people in it and the structures. So there's ways to make this work, and this whole conversation tonight was how we're gonna make this work. In our daily lives, we make this work every day. We find ways to spend money. We find ways to get what we need, whether we're financing some things, whether we're bonding. I think we just need to have a plan and make it happen.
What we could do for you on the 17th is have 2 20-year plans. We could have one that, similar to what we came up with tonight, only have it stretched for 20 years. And the second would be the same thing, only withdraw some of the fire company things and put it as a bond as an option.
That'd be great.
And try to get you some information on what a bond would cost, how
That'd be
many years it would
awesome.
be.
Perfect.
To address Smith's point as far as the library. So we wanted to make sure this was very transparent, and that's why I'm having them come so early to our meeting on the 9th. I didn't want this to be, let's get through the budget. Oh, and by the way, Here's a library ask. They're gonna present, next week. They wanna come to us, then the Board of Finance, like we typically would do, and then a town meeting, and then they wanna go, referendum. And they're hoping to be on the referendum, the same referendum that the budget's on in May. So then every taxpayer will know exactly what the scenarios are, what that bond will cost them. If we go to, we're gonna have to bond that. We're not gonna take whatever the number is out of the undesignated, it would wipe us out. So,
I do have one other question.
Yes.
If maybe one of the representatives from the fire department can speak to it. How on the second floor of the schools, what's their escape plan? How many exits? Yep. So they go out two ways, if they can get down the stairs. If they cannot get down the stairs, how do you get these children out? Do you have a ladder truck that reaches the roof of the school? Okay. How many men would it take to put 6 ladders around the school? Do you have 6 ladders that can reach the top of the school?
she's talking about just ladders on a truck there.
So the escape route, if they cannot get down the stairs, is removing students and faculty from one window. Thank you.
So I think that discussion should actually happen again when we have the public hearing on the Quint truck that we moved forward. And very good points, but that's exactly why.
So I think the advantage, I'm not a fireman, I've never been one, but I think what would have to happen is chief would, and deputy chief would go to the place of need first with our Quint that we have right down the street and call for mutual aid, and whoever could get here faster would be Old Mystic or Mashantucket or whoever happens to be Pawcatuck. And they would go to the second area, but the place of need first, wherever the fire is most causing the most problems, and we would have to get the kids out quicker, at least we'd have a truck that would go a quarter mile down the road and be there. That's correct?
All right. I want to get back.
Back to the library?
Yes.
Hey, Bob, sorry, I'm gonna jump in because nobody notices my hands up. Can you at least do some research and see how the town handled the renovation in '94 when the library became ADA compliant and all that? And can we just sort of make sure we're following the same dance steps that we
Yeah,
did
so
back?
I can try to do that research, but I probably won't be able to do it between now and the 17th. It'll be happening we've got plenty of time before the eventual town meeting referendum. So I can do that, Gary, but I think I got to work on this budget first.
Yeah, no, and I'm a big fan of the library, but I have so just philosophically, this is a big ask for a non-town owned entity. That is a private library open to the public. I'm a supporter of the library, don't get me wrong, but you know, the town has to sort of ask themselves, is this something that the town wants to put a capital investment in? Which is why I think the referendum approach is appropriate, but I'm not sure what was done previously. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. So no, I think that's the only way to do it. And if we had it on the same referendum as the budget and we spelt out to the taxpayer what this costs, like we did for the school, what will this cost the average taxpayer to put this money forward for the library on top of the budget? So we know what the budget's going to do is how it's going to affect the mill rate, but what's the library ask going to do? And what does that mean to the average homeowner in town?
Okay. That's, I mean, Dan, to your good point, that's a good point for, our discussion here with the capital. I mean, it's obviously alleviated a bit because it's going to be a separate issue on the referendum, but Lou?
I just had, being the new guy.
Sure.
The dollar amount that then here calls itself a capital expenditure, is it $10,000? Or is there,
Yes,
is that the number? Is that still,
I think we said $10,000 in 5 years of life.
okay, I just wanted to understand the parameters.
Is that what we agreed on?
The what?
$10,000 in 5 years of life to be on capital?
The
Yeah,
definition.
That's
Yes.
considered a capital asset. Okay, that'd be, and the other question is, speaking of the school, how do we see their capital asset, their capital? It's the second page.
Yeah, and that's been modified by the Board of Selectmen compared to the original ask. The original budget.
Good. Thanks.
I don't know, I want to hear your opinion.
Well, one thing that I keep coming back to, and I think I've mentioned at every meeting, is I would like to see some kind of a maximum number when we think about capital that's somehow tied to our revenues, so that whatever the plan is, it has a cap. So if one day we find ourselves in a position where revenues have tanked, we're not locked into some kind of astronomical capital plan. So I'm gonna continue to just reinforce that, because I think it's important. I have a question on the budget and how it's presented to the town. Are we able to present the budget in the 3 segments of government operating, or 4, the government operating, debt, education, and capital, and have people vote on each of those 4 items as opposed to a total budget?
We've done, well, we usually have 2 budgets, right? We have the school budget and the town budget.
Are we able, so I don't,
So I have
we may
4
not have
questions.
ever done it, but are we able to present the budget to the townspeople in 4 segments and let them pick and choose what they approve or not?
So tell me the 4 segments again.
Government operating, debt, education, and capital.
I don't think we could
Really can't
separate
vote.
that.
We
Okay,
can't
so
vote on that.
So roll debt into the government operating. Could we separate it into 3 and have 3 votes?
So so
I-
it's government.
And I imagine you can, but I imagine we're going to have more referenda than we want.
We've been talking for months about what the townspeople can handle, what they'll stomach, what they'll vote for, what they'll approve, what they'll pay for. The first round of capital plan that the Board of Selectmen provided us in November, completely high level, was a mill increase of 2 mills, all in at 1.7 million. Now we're down to 600,000, which is roughly a mill increase of about 0.5, 0.3.
600,000, so just under about 0.9 of a mil.
No, because we already have 400 in budget,
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
technically, right? So you subtract out the 420 from previous, so. That's, 2 mills is a lot, 0.3 mills is a lot. It depends on who you ask. I mean, I don't know if since this is the first time we're doing it and it's just a thought, do we let the people decide what they want to pay for? If we put out a capital budget of 1.7, which is the initial all-in that I'm not proposing, just saying as a number, and people say yes, we know where we're at. They could easily say no to 0.3, guys, and we just don't know what people want. This conversation that Amy just mentioned about getting our kids out of the second story of school if it's on fire, somebody needs to hear that. I mean, and we're not buying 19 ladder trucks. Pickleball courts are gone, I noticed.
good.
The land acquisition fund has been wiped out. I mean, there's a number of things that we're talking about taking out of here. So we're down to the nuts and bolts of keeping the town running and keeping people safe and wanting to stay here. I have different reasons that I want to stay in North Stonington. The school is not one of them because I don't have kids. But waking up every day and feeling safe is definitely one of them. And I think that a lot of people, I've been here. I've seen the chief give us his plan for 3 years now. Some of you guys have seen it for 7. He says he's been giving it for 15. What happens if we don't have fire trucks? What happens if the roads aren't fixed? What happens if the dump is closed? What happens at the transfer station? What happens if we don't have the plow trucks? I mean, there's a lot of what ifs we're talking about, and it's not pickleball courts. It's our everyday livelihood in this town that I think there's 10 of us trying to solve a $6.4 million problem over the next 5 years. I suggest we think about whether we let the townspeople tell us what they want to pay for.
Well, to Brett's point, you know, we talked to them at the end of the year last year and said we want to have a better capital budget. And I remember Nicole saying that they're gonna own it. And to Brett's point, we have to own it with them. And I think part of this process tonight is to start, and why I'm asking you what you guys' opinions are, is to start fleshing out how exactly we think this long-term budget what it should look like. Get on board with it and own it. And two boards, and I'm not gonna go, I don't think that you go in there and say, oh, please give it to us in 3 segments. You go in there and say, this is the budget, this is the best budget we can present and pass it in one go around because it's the right thing to do. And I have faith in the Board of Selectmen will come in with their best budget. I have faith that the Board of Education will come in with their best budget. When we all get down to it and talk about it. And we're gonna come up with the best capital plan between the two of us and we're gonna own it. So I just need to know where everyone feels as far as, you know, we all know if 450 is not gonna do it, 500 is not gonna do it. You know, my opinion is 650 is just a little bit under where it needs to be. But that's just my opinion. You know, I think if we start spreading out some of these long-term things for the next 5 years, you know, starting this year, we'll be better off, but,
So I have one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't, in the revised plan that Bob presented earlier with the file that Brett emailed us, from the mower skag down in the highway capital plan, all of that stuff is gone from the 5-year plan. And initially that was about $1.2 million worth of expenses. And so we're just talking early and we've already kicked the can on 5 years of expenses, 1.2 million out of the 6.4 total. And Brett's gonna tell me that I'm wrong, but it's not on year 5, so. So that's my concern. Like we're talking about not doing what we've been doing and we just did what we said we weren't gonna do in the revised budget from paper A in my hand and paper B on the computer. So I just want to be cognizant.
yeah, Brett, why were those able to be kicked down the road? Did Donnie say those are things you do in 7 years, 8 years rather than
Bob might come
4
up
years?
with some of those, but I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying some of those are moving to the 28, 29, 30. So if you see one purchase fiscal year 31 on some of those, but also you have to remember, and this is what's a little different about the newer process of you seeing all this and being part of the presentations from the start, is some of this is wants, right? They're not all needs. The capital plan, just like anything, is from department heads, from non-elected people that don't even live in town, just like in a business, people want new desks, new chairs, new things. So they come up with a list, they give it to Bob in the selectmen, and we start going through it. Bob pushes back before we see it, and then we all sit down and see it and go through those things.
I understand that. When I look at the highway capital budget, items below the mower skag are all replacements. If we don't need them, why do we have them now? Why are we maintaining them?
No, they are replacements, but
Yep.
they're starting after.
I understand. So this isn't a
So,
want list.
In his 20-year plan that he just says he'll work on
They're in there.
for the next meeting,
Yeah, so
then
that's the
those will
bubble.
show
So
up.
we just pushed the bubble from
no,
28 to 31.
We may
didn't-
not need them right now.
we didn't push it. We don't need them today.
They
So
weren't-
that's
they
the
weren't in there
thing.
for today. They're in there for 2028. So that's what her point is. They're in for 2028, which is 3 years from now. And now we're pushing.
They're not in what we gave you. are they?
No, that's my
Okay.
point.
Some of them are, well,
So what we're doing is reevaluating
one of them
in
is.
the
Two
also
of
the
them.
process and how we're doing it. So
But
Bob
we
can
pushed it. We didn't
answer more.
eliminate them. So
What's that?
there's a difference, in my mind, there's a difference between between me saying, I want a new pair of earrings and I have to have a new pair of earrings. I don't, if I want them, I can get rid of them. If I need them, I can't. So when I see replacements move 3 years, we still have to have that truck replaced. It's not like we can live without it forever.
Right, so it might be 5 years it needs to be replaced and not the 3 that they originally set.
I think those are really good points, and I think we're gonna have to see that 10-year, 20-year plan
Right.
and
Like I said, when I was up here earlier, fiscal year 2020, 24, 25, 25, 26 are pretty dead set. Gets a little washy near the end because of the new structure, but we're gonna work on the 20-year plan, and that's when you'll see those move here. So that's one of the reasons that I was in favor of the financing over the planning, because then these trucks that you see here wouldn't be replaced till 35, 36, 37, because we're putting a little away now to get the ones we need today in 4 years, and then we'll start putting away for those once those are paid for. Otherwise, you're doubling all of it, and it's not feasible to tax in ours. And that's why sometimes I know you want to push everything to the taxpayer to vote on everything as it sits, but that's why we're elected. And that's why we're out on the street. We're talking to people. They say how they're feeling, and we're supposed to whittle it down a little bit to something that now they have a say. And then if that doesn't go through, now we have to work harder on it. But if you just put it out bulk like this, we're coming back and forth to town 6
We
times,
wouldn't
and
be
we've
the
done
first-
that before.
We wouldn't be the first town to send budget pieces to referendum. There are other towns around here that do that, where they divide it up and the townspeople vote on each
Oh, yeah,
section.
and we've done it in the
So
past.
this isn't something I dreamed up last night, Brett. This has happened. So
No, I'm not saying about the voting for the 3 separate items or the 2 separate items. We do 2 now. We've done 3 in the past where you vote capital, Board of Ed, and Board of Selectmen, the municipal budget. We've done that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you just took the whole capital, like you said at one point, at whatever that dollar value was, and send it to the town and see what they're willing.
that's our job. That's our job to. look for
That's the
town
one I was
first.
referring to, not the 3. I like the idea of the multiple votes because, not multiple votes, but different referendums, because then Nicole even said it, that's how you know what people feel. So if the municipality goes through and the Board of Ed doesn't, then you know you have to work on the Board of Ed. The problem lies, it is one budget when it's all said and done when we do the tax. So even if, this is what I think we've been told before, even if the town budget went through, but the Board of Ed didn't, we'd still have to vote on both of them again.
So, and to be clear, I didn't mean to let people vote on each capital line. I meant let them vote whether they approve the capital budget that we put forward, whether they approve the education budget and
Right.
town operating.
Which
budget.
totally, you can break it into 3, whatever way we send it to a referendum. So you could put the municipal, the Board of Ed, and capital as a separate vote.
Can I just, point of information here for me?
Sure.
If we do that, we break it up into thirds, then the operating budget is approved, and the school budget's approved, and the capital budget is not approved. But what does that do then to the operational budget? Because the capital budget is taking into consideration removing or changing the assets of the town, and that'll change the operating budget. So the operating budget won't be accurate if you,
I don't think it doesn't change the operating budget.
It just,
it has to.
but I think, to Brett's point, we can't not,
No.
yeah,
But for example, we were gonna replace a truck. And there's $25,000 in the budget to keep that old truck running. The
I see
capital
what you're
budget
saying,
is
yeah.
now rejected. No, because you don't have that in the maintenance budget, because you're gonna buy a new truck. Now that new truck is gone, so you've got to put the $25,000 back into the operating budget. So the operating budget is inaccurate if you don't approve.
That's why you have to revote for all of them.
Right.
yeah,
Because it's just gonna be a rolling thing.
it just offers the signal as to what part of the budget that we should be focused on. So we don't go focus on something that isn't really what the problem is. I really gotta take I'm now crossing into like bad parenting.
Yeah, we're at 9:30. So has anyone not given their opinion on where we'd like to see these guys come next week? You know, we're gonna have one where, you know, you're spreading things out, and one where you're offering some potential bond issues. 17th. All right. I think we've hashed this out enough for today. And I'm gonna move on to review of the minutes. If you need to leave, Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave. Thank you very
Okay.
much. And very good job to the selectmen, despite my philosophical differences. I do appreciate all the hard work that you've done. Have a good night.
Thank you. And we're gonna seat Winona in her place for now. The minutes we sent out, did everyone get those today?
Yep.
Well, you and I wasn't there and you weren't.
I wasn't
Is
there.
this for like last year? Yeah.
We go enough.
We don't?
Make a motion to table the minutes for 6:28.
All right, we have a motion to table the minutes. Go ahead.
So there was only 4 people in that meeting, one of which is no longer on this board. So how do we close out those minutes?
Well, you can vote on it, but everybody would have to abstain.
I don't have to abstain.
I do. I wasn't there.
And neither was Mike. Neither was Amy. That's what I'm saying. There was only 4 people in
Carl,
attendance at that meeting and 1 was Paul. So that leaves 3 that can vote on the minutes.
I'd say we table the minutes and then talk to the Antoinette about that. No,
I was gonna say, I mean, you normally abstain just because it's a.
okay, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written for 6:28.
Second. Actually, why don't you're sitting now, why don't you second?
I second the motion to accept those minutes as written.
Okay. Any discussion? You were there, Carl, right? There was I mean, I remember all those discussions about it, but.
Yeah.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
You're gonna abstain. Okay. Public comment. Carolyn? Been waiting patiently.
Just want to say thank you to all of you for effort. I don't miss like these late nights, long meetings,
You're
but
here
I
anyways.
know how much work this is, so thank you. I just want to say that whatever you can do to not have people in town pitted against each other for the review process, I think is best. I've always been one, I'm here and supporting the fire company. I've always been in support of our public safety. But I just have to say, like, driving through East Lyme last week, I'm just so thankful that I live here at North Stonington and I appreciate what we have here. I think it's a beautiful place to live. I think that we do have to make some financial sacrifices in order to keep things the way they are. I think that we should be using grant writers any way possible to help reduce or offset, you know, what we're requiring from the taxpayers. And I think and this is just my personal opinion, I hope that we never have any more solar projects in town, like the one that's right down the road from my house, because I'm just appalled. It's awful. It's horrible. It was bad. And it just seems like it's worse than ever. And if you had something like that, and at least you got some sort of benefit, really long-term benefit, or some collaboration, you know, company doing that, you know, might make it a little bit more, what do you call it, where you could just like
Palatable.
But it's just, you know, those are the kinds of things I think going forward that really our leadership has to be like, you know, if you're going to make some sort of huge sacrifice like that, there has to be some real long-term benefit to the town. We can't destroy our beautiful town for that kind of project moving forward. Short-term gain, small tax payment isn't the answer. So just hopefully going forward. Keep that in mind. Thank you. This is my 2 cents. I don't want to keep you.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Anybody else?
Caroline, for everyone, Caroline was
No?
on the board of finance when I was first on here and has done a lot for the town. Go ahead, Brett.
I just want to say one last thing on a good note. I don't know if you guys know, I don't know, if Bob mentioned it, and I'm totally re-saying it, but we finally have a planner in town now, and she focuses on planning and economic development, so she started Monday or Tuesday. Susan Cullen, she came up from Stonington, so we are on a good trajectory. Planning and zoning, yeah. So next week we'll be fully staffed in the office, and Bob's stress level will come down just a little bit. But thanks for your.
And Amanda Desnoyes was here today. She's our new administrative of finance. And thank you so much for participating with us tonight. It's really nice to have you here in town, and look forward to working with you over this budget cycle.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Wait, next meeting in January. Okay, go ahead. Anyone else? Okay. All those in favor? Aye.